May I now request you to please introduce our guest speaker, Ms. Lulu Raghavan.
With pleasure, President. Uh, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Farhad, go ahead.
Hi. So, firstly, thank you very much, Lulu, for finding time to be with us, and it's a pleasure to see you. Tell you briefly about Lulu. She is the managing director of Landor and Fitch India, and leads a large team of creatives and strategists focused on brand transformation for clients. She has over 2 decades of experience in brand strategy, brand expression, brand experience design, cultural transformation, brand management, and brand performance. She is part of Landor and Fitch Global Management Board and the APEC leadership team. Prior to the integration of Landor and Fitch, Lulu successfully ran Landor in India for 12 years. I still recollect the senior leadership team at the Taj. I worked very closely with her for the brand architecture that she had put together for the company. That was a wonderful experience, I must say. She is a renowned industry commentator and thought leader. She anchored Bloomberg's UTV's Beyond Logo show and is speaker and moderator at brand design and conferences. Lulu was also on the Cannes Lions Design Jury and the Young Lions Design Jury at the Cannes Lions Festival of Creativity in 2018. Lulu was named one of India's 50 most influential women in media, marketing, and advertising in 2019 by Impact Magazine. She evangelizes the power of design and brands to create commercial value and social impact. Lulu is also very passionate about several initiatives, including the Landor and Fitch Good Squad, WPP Green Team, CII Design Council, CII IWN Steering Council, Stella Mentor Council, and the next one has got too many acronyms. I don't know how to get about this. SJIMR, PGM, I think Lulu can explain better what it is. Program Advisory Board, and Sanjeevani Life After Cancer Advisory Board. Great work that she's been doing, apart from her very senior job that she does at Landor and Fitch. In her free time, she actively mentors younger people and on personal branding, personal growth, and development. Over to you, Lulu.
Farhad, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure and honor to be here. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's especially a great honor because as you were talking early on about 100%ers, I wanted to share that my paternal grandfather, S.D. Srinivasan, who is the managing director of LIC, was a 100%er for more than 2 decades at your club. I still remember how he used to go to the Taj and how proud he was of the Rotary. And I feel that a lot of the discipline and rigor that he had has definitely come to me and I learned from him. And another small story is that when I was in Queen Mary School, the first big award that I got was a Rotary Award for Best All-Rounder of the Year. So Rotary has always been very close to my heart. I thought I'll share that with you while I get started. Farhad pointed out that I am a brand evangelist. I'm actually super passionate about the power of brands. Brand and design have incredible value if they are utilized well in the organization. The problem is that a lot of us think of brand as just logo. And so the impact of brand is very limited. Today, in the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to quickly talk about the power of brand to transform organizations and individuals. And I strongly believe that brand transformation is an inside-out journey. I'll start very briefly with my own journey, and then we'll talk about the 5 lessons that one can learn from brands that have transformed themselves. And then I have 10 thought starters for building your own personal brand. Farhad, is it okay if we go to 1:45 and then we can open it up for questions?
Sure. Please go.
Let me try to go through as fast as possible. So very quickly about my journey. I was born in the deep South in Madurai. And I share this with you because I was born into a pretty conservative Tamilian Brahmin family. And then I got the nickname Lulu. My mother actually named me Sulakshana, and my grandfather hated the name Sulakshana and named me Lulu. I share this with you because it's a bit of an existential crisis. I worked abroad for many years and there was never a problem with the name Lulu. But when I came back to India and introduced myself as Lulu Raghavan, people usually would ask, that's such a strange name. Have you bastardized your own name? What's your name? So it's been really interesting over the years to navigate that conversation. My early years were spent in Bangalore in two schools, Baldwin Girls and Valley School. From Valley School, I learned that education never stops. Jiddu Krishnamurthy, who started the school, was a huge believer in the power of education, but that one constantly learns. And in Valley School, my love for lifelong learning was actually seeded. I then moved to Mumbai, where, as I mentioned to you, I was in Queen Mary School, and then moved to Cathedral in the 11th and 12th. And after that, I got a scholarship to go to a college called Davidson, one of the top liberal arts colleges in the US, where I spent 4 years studying economics and math. I actually spent a semester in Tours, France, so I speak fluent French and later on learned Spanish. All of these I'm sharing with you because they've actually shaped my experiences and my skill set, which I have today. After Davidson, I actually came back to India, and my mom introduced me to a gentleman called Shumit Roy, who was at Lintas those days. And he asked me this question. He said to me, Lulu, do you want to be a small fish in a big pond or a big fish in a small pond? You know, I was chasing dreams of being an investment banker or management consultant, and he felt that those were rat races and not really for me. So he introduced me to Ogilvy, he introduced me to R. Sridhar, and I fell in love with brands and Ogilvy Brand Consulting, which was my first job. Sridhar then gave me the second piece of advice, which was very transformative. He was a huge fan of David Ogilvy. He believed that one could be successful in the agency business, but if I was interested in brand consulting, I really needed to get an MBA. So he advised me, and I went on to get my MBA from the SP Jain Institute of Management and Research. Coming out of SP Jain, almost 21 years ago, I started my job. I'm still in my first job, or second job rather. I went to San Francisco and started out at Landor Brand Consultancy, spent 4 years there. My husband was working for a .com. The .com crashed. He went to business school, and then we moved to New York. I was able to move to Landor in New York, where I spent a year, and then moved on to London. I was super lucky when we were in London because that is when Mr. Naresh Goyal hired Landor for rebranding of Jet Airways. It was my first big Indian client program, and I learned a tremendous amount from seeing how Indian entrepreneurs thought about the business and how they valued brands. A year later, my husband and I had an opportunity to come back to Mumbai, and I was given charge of setting up the operations for Landor here. So that was Landor Mumbai in 2007. Initially, we were 5 girls. This is more by default rather than design. We did a lot of work for the Taj Group and Hindustan Construction Company. We did the Lavasa brand. And Mr. R.K. Krishnakumar at the Taj used to call us the ladies of Landor, actually. We were quite famous. And he asked me if I only hired women on our team. I grew the Landor team to 25 people. And then last year, we had an integration with Fitch. Some of you may be familiar with the retail design company Fitch. I'm very lucky to be at a company with 2 iconic founders. Walter Landor, who famously invented branding, he said that products are manufactured in the factory, but brands are created in the mind. And Rodney, who is a great pioneer of retail design, he really felt that design was the differentiator, and he wanted to create extraordinary design for the masses. Our core is brand transformation. And in the last 21 years of my career, everything that I've done is about brand transformation. And for us, that involves aligning the brand strategy with the business strategy, thinking about how the brand comes to life in all the elements, how it thinks, how it speaks, how it looks, how it feels, the experience of the brand, how the brand can be used to transform your culture and engage your employees, how rigorously you manage your brand, and how you keep an eye on brand performance to really impact the business. Today, our team is over 100. We have lots of celebrations online, all of us dedicated to brand transformation. Before I get on to how extraordinary brand transformation can help companies and individuals, When I look back on the last 21 years, what are the 3 or 4 things that I'm really proud of to have given back to society? I've evangelized brand. I did a show with Bloomberg UTV on how brands are much beyond logo, and the show was actually called Beyond Logo. I was at the Cannes Lion, as I pointed out, but when I came back, I really used all of my learnings to help our teams here understand what world-class design and branding are about. Redu is here and Farhat, of course. They'll smile when they see this. The work that we did for the Taj is actually a Harvard Business School case study, and there are several case studies on the work that we've done. One of the complaints that we've heard from the IIMs and other business schools is that there aren't enough brand case studies. So my team and I have contributed tremendously to that as well. And like I pointed out earlier, the thing I think I'm super proud about is all of these folks who've gone on to head agencies, to be, CMOs on the client side, all of whom I spent a lot of time mentoring. And I'm also giving back by writing a weekly newsletter every Sunday on personal growth and development. It's called Ideas to Play With, and you can see it on my website, luluraghavan.com. That's just a very quick background about my journey so that you know where I'm coming from when I make comments about brands and share with you lessons from some of the companies that we work with. We strongly believe that brands matter more than ever before. If you really look at the stock market and you look at how companies are valued, more than 30% of the enterprise value is represented by brand. Michael Eisner was one of the first CEOs who recognized the power of brand. He said that the Disney brand is our most valuable asset. It's the sum total of 75 years in business, our reputation, everything that we stand for. BrandZ is a database. You can actually go online and take a look at it. It tracks the index of strong brands versus the S&P index and the MSCI World Index. For those of us who are very oriented by research and facts, you can see here how investing in brands delivers superior shareholder returns. So if you look at the red line, that's the BrandZ Strong Brands portfolio, significantly outperforming both the S&P and the MSCI World Index. What's super interesting here is actually when you look at what happens to brands in the downtime. So if you look at 2008, when Lehman happened, or even at the start of the COVID crisis, you'll see how the market, as well as the index of strong brands, has dipped. But when things start to come back, the strong brands portfolio has fallen less, but also recovers much faster. So brand is really reputation in the bank that you can count on. And when we say brand, it is really an intersection of strategy, of experience design, and of culture, which comes together. A lot of people say, well, okay, then what does brand mean if it's not a logo? You might have heard Jeff Bezos, who talked about brand as what people say when you're not in the room. So after I leave today, when you're talking about this session, what you say about the session or say about me really defines brand Landor & Fitch or brand Lulu in your minds. I also wanted to have a parallel track on personal branding because this is of huge interest to a lot of folks. When I talk about corporate brands and building powerful brands, many folks ask me, well, how does this apply to personal brands? Think about personal branding as how you'd like to be remembered as an individual. What's the legacy that you'd like to leave behind? That's really an ideal way of thinking about personal branding. So here are 5 things for you to think about when it comes to brands, whether you have an organizational brand or a personal brand that you'd like to transform. Organizations use brand to transform the culture first. What do we mean by this? Mahindra is a really great example. The business had made great strides, but the brand was actually perceived as quite fuddy-duddy. And this pained Anand Mahindra. He had bought SsangYong, He had invested in Reva, the electric car. They bought Satyam. The company was making great strides, but the brand was seen as quite agricultural, as not very progressive or dynamic. So what they did first was to define a purpose for the organization. And that purpose was defined as RISE, Mahindra being an organization that truly empowers all of its stakeholders to get ahead. They defined it as RISE as their reason to be, a rallying cry, their philosophy and call to action as being able to stretch their arms towards perfection. They say that RISE is who we are and together RISE is what we do. This is not just a poster that's put up in the cafeteria or in the different offices of the Mahindra Group. They are super committed to the pillars of RISE, which are accepting no limits, alternative thinking, and driving positive change. All of these pillars are actually driven into the way the business heads think about the business and even how employees are actually evaluated. What's super interesting is during the COVID times, this purpose of the organization was so firmly embedded that employees actually rose to the occasion. You might have read about how the factories in Nasik, they repurposed it to make low-cost ventilators. It was really amazing, powerful story. Internally, they have RISE awards that really reward employees who exhibit on brand behaviors. So brand transformation really starts with finding a very powerful purpose that motivates or can motivate the organization and employees. As it relates to personal branding, I love to say that we have to go in before we go out. A lot of people tend to think of personal branding as social media and shouting out from the rooftop, but it's really about figuring out your special gift, your true talent that you can pour into your work and share with the world. That's the first imperative for brand transformation, which is really about inside out, aligning employees, and as it relates to personal branding, really understanding yourself and finding out what's truly special and different about you. The second part of brand transformation is about reimagining the entire brand experience. This is a customer journey map for BMW. Think about the stages of the journey, the touch points. You have so many ways in which an organization can build its brand other than advertising, right? It's the communications, but it's also the call center, it's the retail showrooms, it is social media, it's the way your employees actually interact with customers. All of the touch points create an impression of what the brand stands for. We have a tool called the Experience Map that really helps you think through how the brand will be expressed in all of the touch points. So how the brand looks, how it feels, how it talks, how it does, how it even dreams. Let me give you a quick visual example of Etihad. This was Etihad, the national carrier of Abu Dhabi. Look at how dowdy it looks, right? And this is supposed to be the national carrier. Abu Dhabi, meanwhile, had taken on this reputation of becoming a modern city, one of the most fascinating places on earth. They had invested in visionary architecture, a city of unprecedented luxury. Etihad was supposed to be its ambassador in the air, and it did not embody Etihad at all. It did not embody Abu Dhabi at all. So when we worked with Etihad, it was really to link Etihad with the stature and perception that Abu Dhabi had gained globally. And so the whole idea was to make this airline remarkable. They said that their purpose was to transform what each of us believed travel could be. So we really were inspired by the facets of Abu Dhabi. So if you think about the gold and the sand dunes and see how that comes to life and the expression of the brand carried through all of the touch points. So this is the first class lounge in Abu Dhabi. everything that the brand does, from the livery of the aircraft to how it actually speaks. So even the way in which the different product segments are named, to the service that you receive, each of the individual touch points embodying this contemporary modern spirit of Abu Dhabi. And then how they start to sponsor remarkable festivals as well. The Etihad rebrand was considered one of the most successful rebrands many, many years ago. From a personal branding perspective, a lot of people say, how can I express myself through different touch points? Think about brand and branding as story and signals. If you go in to find your story, where will you go out? Here are all the touch points as you as individuals, whether you're Mr. Chennai or Nirav Shah. How do you build your personal brand? Think about your business card, your website, your LinkedIn profile, your published articles. But even if you don't do any of those elements, how you appear, how you speak, your handwriting, less relevant these days, your body language, photographs of you, how you shake your hand, word of mouth, all of these signal back to your story. So if you want to be intentional about building your personal brand, you need to align your story with the signals that you are sharing with the world. The third aspect of extraordinary brand transformation is about communicating your extraordinariness. You know, some folks feel like you could just sit away in a corner and beaver away and the world will discover you. They're not going to. You have to communicate. And of course, in advertising and marketing, we say communicate, communicate, communicate. And I think in the last 2 years, all organizations have found their voice in terms of the need to communicate. You need to do it internally first, always, externally, and then constantly repeat. I'm not going to actually take you through the transformation of Wipro, which is a rebrand that we worked on. I'm just conscious of the time that we have. But it started with identifying a core purpose for the brand, which was this idea of amplifying clients' business success through the power of connected insights. That story that Wipro wanted to communicate or stand for was then manifested in the visual identity of the brand. You know, you see all of the connected dots. They wanted to bring their siloed organization together on one platform to serve their clients better through an integrated perspective on their clients' problems. And then they used every touch point, from their business cards to the website. They launched the brand internally and made sure that all of their employees understood the spirit of Wipro and the promise of connected insights before they actually took it out to the market. So this was an internal teaser campaign. So really engaging employees for almost 2 months on understanding the new values of the brand and what it stood for. And then they had a very special launch to their top 300 customers in the US, where they introduced the why before the brand. A lot of times, companies undergo brand transformation and nothing changes except the logo, and customers don't understand the why. Wipro actually did a 2-day seminar with their top 300 customers to take them through the why of the change and how else their organization was changing and how they were committed to the path ahead. A lot of investment in communication internally and externally. When it comes to personal branding, you too need to have a very powerful pitch. Can you condense everything that's great about you, your skills, your strengths, your credibility, the values that you stand for? So when somebody asks you, now most of you won't have to go through this, but when I'm chatting with younger folks and we talk about interviewing and in a job interview, the interviewer says, tell me about yourself. Are you going to go down this long history, or do you have a powerful 10-word pitch? I'm a brand evangelist, super committed to creating commercial impact, for example. So this is something that you could work on. And then for those of you who wish to manifest that, you can think about different channels. So whether it's your own website where you have a lot of control over the content, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, or now Clubhouse is all the rage. How do you really make sure that you appear and come to life in a way that's consistent with your elevator pitch? The search bar on Google is hugely important as well, because when somebody types in Kunti Oza or Swati Bansali, what is it that they actually get? That gives them an impression about who you are. Today, people will Google search you even before meeting you. When you do all of this, your transformed brand will supercharge growth, right? A good example is Covestro. I don't know, some of you are familiar with Bayer, the company. Bayer Material Science was spinning off, and more than 4,000 people needed a new home. They didn't have the Bayer brand anymore. So how do you create a brand which can create affinity and a sense of belonging for 4,000 people who for decades were used to the Bayer brand? That's where the whole process of brand transformation begins, with a real understanding of what the company is, what it stands for. Here, the true values were chosen to be curious, courageous, and colorful. The core of the brand was defined, like I showed you before, the purpose, the shorthand for the brand. Here it was, this new company was creating material solutions to push the boundaries of what is possible. So very powerful mission statement that could rally these 4,000 people. A new name was developed, Covestro, from collaboration, innovation, and strength. And then you'll see the nod back to the Bayer identity, which also has this circle halo, but super colorful, the brighter element. And you'll see how this is then brought to life. So I'm just showing this to you because it's really quite simple. Define what you stand for and then express that in every touch point that you have. This is really fun. The leadership team on the day of their IPO, even without being briefed, all showed up in the different colors of the brand because they were so proud of the brand. And the brand team also created these umbrellas to excite all employees and make them feel an immediate connection to the brand. And this is the day of the launch. You'll see, so creating an entire new company from scratch, the process of brand transformation is super valuable. And you'll see, how well Covestro did with employees and the approval that they got. So if I were to summarize, what are the key success factors for extraordinary brand transformation? Some of you may go through this process. There'll be lots of stakeholders. You have to make it inclusive, but ultimately one person has to make the call. Even in the case of Mahindra, when we were rebranding and developing a whole new identity for Mahindra, ultimately, Anand Mahindra had to make some calls. So this is really important. Otherwise, you can go around in circles. A lot of times we hesitate to move forward, and sometimes we go too fast ahead. It's important to respect tradition and emotion, but it's also important to change. And for every organization, it's a balance of, the baggage with the case for change, baggage and heritage with the case of change, for the case for change, which really should be based on both logic and magic. A lot of times branding is seen as guidelines. That is a way to truly ensure that the integrity of the brand is maintained. But these days, it's much more about inspirational guidelines versus fear psychosis. Before, a logo couldn't be touched. It was all about being sacrosanct about the logo. But hopefully you can see that branding has moved so much beyond the logo. It is about employee engagement. It's about culture transformation. It is about customer experience more than anything else. We chatted about how it's important to launch the brand internally before you do externally, because your people are truly your most powerful brand ambassadors. And that's something that many times companies forget. We do want you to ensure that a brand change goes much deeper than a logo change. As I shared with you in Mahindra and in Wipro's case, a lot of work was done internally to change the culture and align employees with the new vision before the brand was rolled out. A brand transformation is a great opportunity to use the brand as a flag bearer of change. The brand excites and inspires. So how can you tap into its power to really align all of your stakeholders. And this is very critical. Ensure the brand promise can be delivered at every single touch point of the brand. We were involved with the disastrous Air India rebrand many, many moons ago, but it was a disaster not because the logo changed, but because nothing else changed. Today, you can't do a rebrand without ensuring that the new promise is delivered at every touch point. And that's super critical. And this is something that we as a country, as a nation, sometimes are not very good at, and that is execution and persistence. I've worked in many countries and I've seen how much discipline there is when it comes to execution after the strategy has been decided. And so if you're really serious about building a strong brand, we should follow what Paul Polman, the chairman of Unilever, ex-chairman, said. 99% of brand building is in execution, and it takes a lot of persistence. So how do we relate this with personal branding? So I just wanted to add a few things from a personal brand perspective. I like to think about building a brand as raising a child. You're imbuing it with values, and there's a long-term perspective. You don't know how it's going to turn out, but certainly you have to give it a go. You have to enjoy the journey, right? It's the journey, not a destination. That's really important. Now, this is very counterintuitive to start with, but I strongly believe that you're not going to have a personal brand if you don't take care of sleeping better, eating better, moving better, and thinking better. A fantastic book by Greg Well called The Ripple Effect talks about the foundational elements of success. And this is certainly one of them. And there's this ripple effect. So especially when I'm talking to younger folks, I ask people to raise their hand. How many hours a day do you sleep? And then, some of them proudly raise their hands for 4 hours and 5 hours. And I tell them, forget it, guys, you're not going to build a personal brand. Because if you don't have this as a foundation, you're not going to be successful. Personal branding is also about how inspired you are by the world. So this is really about feeding your mind. As I say, garbage in, garbage out. No offense to anybody, but page 3 in, page 3 out, right? And so it's really important to give your mind diverse stimulus, because all of those ideas are playing in your mind and you never know which dots are going to connect to build that breakthrough idea that your business needs. A lot of times we focus on our mind, but we forget our soul and our spirit. And to build a holistic personal brand, it's really important to feed both your soul and your spirit. It could be culture, it could be the arts or music, it could be religion or even meditation. Whatever really suits you, but don't neglect your soul and spirit in pursuit of excellence of the mind alone. They all together give you a holistic perspective. We had the elevator pitch. One of the exercises you can do before the elevator pitch is to write an obituary of yourself in 140 words or less. It sounds a bit morbid, but it's a nice way of thinking about the legacy that you want to leave behind. It will help you define an intent, a vision, a dream for yourself at work. A lot of times, and especially for women, we think that we have to follow somebody else's footsteps, but it's really important to develop and nurture your own persona. We also forget that we have a voice. We do have one, and it's really important to use it. If you're invisible, nobody's going to know you exist. You don't have to be on social media to have a personal brand, but in meetings and in other forums where you have an opportunity to be visible, you have to be visible to build your personal brand. Growth also comes from stepping out of the comfort zone. Sometimes we get very comfortable with the responsibilities and challenges that we have. So how can we do things that are outside of our comfort zone to truly see that growth? When it comes to leadership, don't pander to a stereotype of what we think a boss or a manager. This is especially true for women. It's really important to lead with your natural style. And at the end of the day, if you don't promote yourself, nobody will, not even your boss or your manager. And if you dream big and you want those opportunities out there in the world, you have to promote yourself in a way that's adding value to others, not in a way that's just about calling attention to yourself. And at some stage, once you've established yourself, it's not about yourself anymore. It's about shining the light on others. And promoting and mentoring others, both men and women, is one of the best ways to build your own personal brand. And that's super important, to be yourself, because everybody else is already taken. That's all I have to say. I'm sorry it was a bit rushed towards the end. But let me stop sharing my screen, and I'd love to hear your feedback. If you have any questions, comments, if you disagree, that's completely fine as well. I think we do have 5 minutes. So would love any thoughts that you have.
Thank you. Thank you.
I see Sanjeev, my friend. Let's go, Sanjeev.
You've got a lot of friends here. That's nice to see. We do have some questions, and we'll start off with Mudit Jain.
Yes, thank you for that lovely talk, Ms. Raghavan. I have 2 quick questions. One is, how much time in general it takes to develop a good brand? And would you know how much additional premium in terms of percentage one can command if one has a good brand? I know it's very generic, but still some thoughts on that. Thank you.
Based on my experience in India, I would say that developing a brand, developing a full expression of the brand, including the experience for a mid-sized to large organization, can take anywhere between a year to year and a half. For a smaller startup, it could be 2 to 3 months. It really depends on the management's commitment to aligning and defining a common vision, seeing how that then comes to life in how the brand is defined, and then most importantly, the focus on execution. So both how it's taken into the culture and how it's then manifested in the experience of the brand. The Mahindra Group, Mr. Jain, spent 3 years on internalizing the brand before it signaled to the world that it had refreshed its brand. And the second question on premium, it really depends on how rich you make the customer experience and the additional value that you're able to garner. At the end of the day, premium is perceived value. So if you use the process of design thinking and a lot of intimate conversations with the clients, you can truly understand what they value in your product or service and how it's designed. And you can continuously make improvements to that. And so I think it's harder to put a number on that, except to say that the sky is the limit. It's really about all the value that you pack in to the perceived experience of your brand.
Satyan, your question?
Thank you, Fali. Ms. Raghavan, that was really insightful. I have 2 questions. One is a little specific on the Mahindra Rise branding which you've done. If you see the logo, after the word Rise, there is a full stop. Any particular significance to that full stop which is there? And second question is that when you're creating a brand, how much do you factor in the risk of social media outrage in it?
Great question, Satyan. There was a debate for 3 months on the full stop. Actually, truth be told, there was also debate on whether Rise was a tagline. It actually wasn't, in all honesty, intended to be used as a tagline. It was a strategic intent for the organization which captured its purpose. It was not meant to be manifested as a tagline because people misunderstood Rise to be about Mahindra rising. So I'm not going to get into the full stop debate, just to tell you that when you develop these positionings, purpose statements, you really have to think through internal versus external. And your second question was, just remind me, sorry.
The risk of social media outrage. How much do you?
Risk of social media. Today, when brands refresh, it's become a competitive sport for armchair experts to critique. The thing that I would say is, as long as you have a logic and a rationale and there aren't any major negatives with your new brand or your new identity in terms of offending people, you should go ahead as long as you can reinforce the meaning and the reason and the logic. You will have a lot of social media outrage. Sometimes it dies down. If you even think about the Myntra controversy, which happened a few months ago, Myntra existed for more than 10 years. Nobody noticed anything about the logo. One lady noticed something negative about it, and there was a huge hue and cry, and then it settled down. So a lot of times the initial reaction to brands changing is always negative. We always advise our clients to focus on the enhanced customer experience. It's not about the logo. The logo is not important. It is a manifestation of who you are and what you stand for, but it's only one. Think about the iceberg. Everything that exists below is really the true important aspect of the brand.
Thank you.
May I ask a question?
Yes, please, Mr. Jatia. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
May I?
Yeah, go ahead, and then we'll get Sanjeev after that.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, well, fascinating talk, Lulu. I really enjoyed every word of it. I am a lawyer by profession, and so therefore brand building is proscribed where I'm concerned. So leave me out of it. But I had a question. Is there any scope for modesty in the whole brand building exercise? Because as I see it, you're really trying to project yourself in one sense, subtly or otherwise, as a superstar. But you're not all that you're projecting. So can you hold something back or be a little honest about it and say, well, all right, I'm very good at this, that, and the other, but don't expect the earth from me. In the other departments, I'm not there. I'm just asking you, is there therefore, in short, can you be a little modest in brand building, and would that add value to the way in which you project yourself?
Absolutely. Actually, that's a great question, Mr. Jagtiani, because even globally, journalists talk about corporates that are more vulnerable and honest about their shortcomings or where they may have done something wrong, but fess up to a wrongdoing, but then come out of it, actually then are seen as more powerful or stronger brands. As relates to individuals, I think the point of branding is to amplify your strengths, but you shouldn't amplify something that's not authentic or genuine. And you're absolutely right. There's a fine balance of speaking too much about your achievements and not speaking enough. So I think everybody has to find that balance of how much to promote yourself. It can't be too blatant. The best guiding principle is to continuously add value to others, to your organization, to your customers, to your family, to your friends. If you think of added value as a guiding principle, then you can never go wrong with your brand. And if you put yourself second, so it's almost others first, me second, which seems at the face of it, in direct contradiction to what branding is about, but you can brand yourself as someone who's all about others. I think then you have a very, very powerful brand, which is charismatic and magnetic, and all your stakeholders are attracted to it.
Thank you very much.
Sanjeev, go ahead.
Yeah. Lulu, how often should you refresh your brand, both personal and as a corporate?
There's no magic number of years, Sanjeev. The guiding principle is relevance.
This is Pranay Vakil.
Oh, sorry, Pranay. Oh, I thought that was Sanjay. Hi, Pranay. Sorry. Pranay, you can ask me these questions offline. Okay. Excellent question. It's really about relevance. If the brand is fading in relevance with customers, fading in relevance with a new segment, or is not relevant to a new segment that you want to target, or becoming less relevant to employees, or if you feel that, hey, you know what, I'm not getting the opportunities that I deserve personally, then it means that how you perceive yourself and how the world perceives you is not aligned. It's really about aligning those two. Some of you who've done psychology would be familiar with the Johari window, which is the psychology construct or framework, super useful in building brands because it allows you to do an inventory of the strengths about what you know that others know, but then really think about the things that others know about you that could be highlighted, but more importantly, find the blind spots. And many times when we discover those blind spots, we can address them and align our brands to be much stronger. So it's really about relevance. The key word there is relevance.
Thank you.
Okay, should I ask my question?
Go right ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Lulu. So nice to see you. Just to let everyone know that Lulu is also a great tennis star. a tennis player and a super sports woman. So I think she does great balancing between her work and sports. So Lulu, I had a question that, the use of celebrities for endorsements, and how, according to you, how commercially viable is it to sort of have celebrities, especially for the national brands? And how cost effective is it? That's the first question. And second question, that, when you're doing any kind of brand positioning, so do you have some targets in mind, short term, medium term, dynamic and fast moving environment of there being intense competition, perception of customers changing, more competition, more features coming in. So do you have some kind of a plan that, look, I think we are repositioning. I think this is going to be here 3 to 5 years, and we should be prepared to rebrand, reposition going into the future.
Right. Okay. So just in terms of time frame, it's not an exercise which is done once in 10 years like it was before. It's constantly changing. So you have a brand definition, and you have to, we say that the brand is always in beta, Sanjeev. So you choose something, you don't dramatically change it, but you have to constantly evolve it, and really keep it fresh. That's on terms of how you keep listening to your customer and evolve to keep the meaning of the brand really fresh. As it relates to celebrities, we are huge proponents of creating ambassadors for the brand that are not so expensive. But to tell you the truth, in India, all of the research done by my advertising friends, and when I say friends, it's all the research companies that do it, it's super effective in India. Katrina goes on TV and talks about her Dell computer, sales go up 6%. It's undeniable that in our country, between cricket and Bollywood, ambassadors work. That's the reason why companies pay crores for celebrities. Now, if they haven't leveraged the celebrity properly, or not managed the link between what the celebrity stands for and what their brand stands for longer term, it may not work as well. But there is a lot of research to say it has a direct impact on sales, which is why companies brief their agencies to find celebrities for the brands.
All right, thanks.
Dushyant?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
hi, Lulu, it was a brilliant presentation. Yeah, can you, hi, Lulu, it was a brilliant presentation, definitely. I have two questions. I hope it's not outrageous. A lot of companies do exist without a brand and without a logo, and we have seen number of them. So, so when a company does keep on working and growing without a logo, it is still known and doing very well. Probably in stock market itself, we keep on trying to search the companies which are not prominent but doing well. So whether the company or an individual can exist without a brand and a logo, there is one. Second, sometimes
could I answer that question, Dushyant?
Yeah,
could I answer that question just so that everyone stays focused on the question? Again, super question, and thank you for challenging the notion. Of course, companies and people can exist. They've existed all of these years, right? The question is, what can brand get you? In a sea of sameness, brand can help you cut through the clutter. If you're looking for a job, the companies that you apply for get hundreds and thousands of resumes. The way you write your resume and how you present yourself can help you cut through the clutter, get noticed, get considered, get preferred, and get preferred again and again. The same with companies. If everybody knows them, knows their special value and how they're distinct and different, you don't need the tools of branding. Branding is there to help you stand out, to get noticed, and to really create preference. So it's in those industries and in those situations in which companies or individuals need to create distinction and create preference where the whole world of brands and the tools of branding come into play.
Yeah, thanks. It's a great answer. And the second is that sometimes the brand and the company becomes synonymous. For example, we are talking about Jeff Bezos and Amazon, or Ratan Tata and Tata, kind of a thing. So what happens when something goes adverse was with an individual.
Can you hear me? Sorry, we lost you, but I think I got the gist of the question. When the CEO or the founder is very intrinsically...
Some new owner comes.
Yeah.
The part of the company, yeah.
Right. Actually, the two examples that you chose, Amazon and Tata, both Mr. Tata and I think both the companies have transcended the founders. Amazon will continue to exist much after Jeff Bezos. That has already happened. There are many other companies where if the founder is not there, the whole company is going to fall apart, right? But in both of these cases, they've been institutionalized enough. But you do raise a good point. The brand of the individual has to be managed and thought of differently than the brand of the company. So at the organization, so Tata, for example, or at Amazon, I think there's a lot of daylight between how the brand Amazon is managed and how Jeff Bezos and what he does is. There is certainly linkages about how one feeds the other. And it's almost that virtuous cycle of how they help each other. I would say that if the organization has built up a purpose and core values and aligned its employees, it can transcend a founder's difficulties when it comes to reputation. And a lot of these reputational issues are quite short-lived. As we can say, we've already forgotten Jeff Bezos and we've moved on to Bill Gates as our next target, right? So soon Bill Gates will be forgotten as well.
May I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Hi,
please.
Lulu. It's always so wonderful to hear you. It's never enough, like I shared with you. I've had the privilege of knowing Lulu even beyond work, her husband, her in-laws, family, and she embodies what you will be remembered for. She really embodied what you shared with us. But I have two, that was a comment. I have two questions, Lulu. There is this slew of influencers that are being used to promote products, and it's become like a fad. What is your view on that, on brands? And second thing is, after COVID, what are the opportunities and challenges for the strong brands?
Yeah, great.
What I forgot to mention, and she didn't mention, she's a fantastic mother as well. Yeah.
Thank you. So sweet of you, Renu. That's the hardest part of my job, I have to
Yeah,
say.
exactly.
I have
And I
more
noticed you
anxiety and
left it
stress
out.
about
Yeah.
anxiety. Actually, I should put that as one of the slides, proud of being mom. Influencers, you need people to talk about yourself, your brand. As long as the influencers really relate with your cause, with your mission, if they do it authentically, they buy into your values, and then they're screaming at the top of their lungs about it, fantastic. You know, it is when they promote a product but use some other product behind the scenes, or they don't really live the lifestyle that the brand is promoting, there's a disconnect and inauthenticity. So influencers are great if you can find people that really buy into the mission that your brand is on. When it comes to the opportunities for strong brands, I believe that they're limitless. If we really were to sit down and speak to our users and customers and listen to their needs, Renu, the opportunity to create something for them is phenomenal. You know, I've gone back to school. I'm taking a 3-month design thinking course with Stanford. And yesterday we had the first lecture with Professor Stefanos, who's a design thinking coach. Renu, we had a half-an-hour exercise. We had 150 people in a Zoom call. One of the participants was interviewed by the professor for 5 minutes on her coffee tastes. And we all had to create innovations on coffee cups, coffee experiences, product ideas. Just 5 minutes of interviewing her led to about 200 ideas that the team generated. So strong brands that can truly understand the pulse of their customers, their needs and their aspirations, as well as their anxieties, and can really find a way to add value to their lives, the opportunities are limitless. I mean, look at the Taj. You know, 10 years ago, you only did hotels. Today, you're doing homestays, you're doing digital delivery, You're doing so much more. And I think the sky is the limit for the Taj. You could do 5 more new products or services in the next year. The imagination is so important to unleash these innovations. And I think the opportunities are limitless for brands that have already earned the trust of their customers.
Yeah, but your tone has to become more empathetic than brash and in the face.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's my
Absolutely.
view, but I thought it'd be good
No,
to
it is
Yeah.
absolutely a correct view, whether it's personal brands, it's us as leaders, as CEOs of organizations, whether it's understanding your customers. Empathy is definitely the key word. I think if the dictionary had to choose a word of the year, it would be empathy. In every discussion, it's about empathy.
Thank you so much, Lulu. Yeah. Thank you, Chair, President.
Pleasure. We have 2 more questions. Is that all right, Lulu?
Yes, absolutely.
Wonderful. Shahnaz, go ahead with yours.
Shahnaz, you need to unmute yourself.
Sorry. Thank you for a very interesting talk. I was wondering if you have done any studies or any quantifiable studies after your branding exercises, which would show that, this is how much the sales went up or profitability went up. So has there been any kind of quantifiable measure after the kind of branding exercises you have done? Do you follow that path?
Yeah, great question, Shahnaz. It's much easier to isolate the positive impact on branding when it comes to something like packaging design. So for example, Mother Dairy Dahi, we redesigned the Dahi and sales went up 23%. When you rebrand an organization, there are a lot of factors and it's very difficult to isolate the impact of branding. But organizations like the Mahindra, that we have worked with, Nature's Basket, we can identify the imagery attributes, how the brand is perceived. So if you look at Mahindra, they track innovativeness, dynamism, progressiveness, social sensitivity, and the percentage of customers that view them as those attributes. And they've really seen an uptick over a period of time. When the brand is used for cultural transformation, the attrition is a figure. Both engagement as well as attrition. How engaged, so your employee engagement score is a good measure of how the brand is internally being deployed to create a wonderful environment for employees. But at a very aggregate level, it's that brand Z chart that I showed you where the index of companies with strong brands defined in very clear quantitative terms outperforms the index.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we have the last question from SV. Go ahead.
Thanks, Vali. First of all, a lot of food for thought, Lulu, and thanks very much for that. I just had a couple of questions. One was, in today's world, how important is social media both for an individual brand and a corporate brand? Can an individual or a corporate, for example, I'm told that Ranbir Kapoor has decided that he won't be in social media at all. And he still seems to be doing all right. Can it work for a corporate? Because many times I think social media can be a huge diversion from your business because you end up spending disproportionate amount of time on that. And the second question is, in today's world, especially in a tinsel world, in Bollywood, Hollywood, whatever, would somebody like a Greta Garbo or a Suchitra Sen survive, who kind of bring an aura of mystique about them? Because you seem to suddenly see all film actors, actresses, always in your face. I would love your comments on both. Thank you.
So I think the first answer would be it really depends on the size of your ambitions. Personal branding does not require social media. But if I need to be recognized by the world, if I want people in different countries to find me or give me opportunities, I could leverage the internet and social media to put myself out there. LinkedIn has been huge for me personally, I can tell you, in building my brand. I get so many opportunities from so many different countries in the world to speak there, to write, to endorse books, etc. I didn't need any of that, but it just allows me a larger playing field. As regards Ranbir, he's already created his brand. Actually, a journalist from the Mint asked me this question just 2 weeks ago on celebrities going off of social media. It's a choice, whether it's us, ordinary individuals, or celebrities. It's a strategic choice to be on social media. If you have the energy and want to constantly be in touch with your large fan following, use it. But it's not required either for companies or for individuals. However, as a company, it's almost become a default. Just as no company doesn't have a website today, if you're not on social media, you are seen perhaps as not reachable or not communicating your strength. So it's a double-edged sword. It's a great opportunity to present yourself the way you'd like to be presented, but you have to have a team in place to really manage the possible fallouts from any missteps that happen. And then the second point about mystique and intrigue, I agree with you. A part of branding is also intrigue. So if you put yourself out there and say everything about you and there's no more mystery, then you're actually diluting your brand. So you have to do it in a way that keeps your followers really interested. You don't give it all away. You continue to draw them in through the fresh and exciting things that you do. Alia Bhatt is a great example. She manages her brand brilliantly. You never get tired of her. You keep wanting more and more.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lulu. It's been wonderful hearing you today. Lots, given us food for thought as well. Thank you very much. May I now request Satyan to please give the official vote of thanks.
With pleasure, Fali. Dear Ms. Raghavan, thank you for your expert insights. In fact, we all now have a deeper understanding and appreciation for branding and its impact. We will surely be talking about this session long after the meeting has ended. As a token of our appreciation for you spending this afternoon with us, we will be lighting up a rural household using solar power, and we will be sharing the certificate also with you in a short course of time.